Hello, guys. Braxcast time once again. This is the 82nd episode of the Braxcast, and we've got some pretty exciting stuff to talk about. We've got the Rippazine Collection. I want to get right into that, and then afterwards we'll be going through the Saints and Sinners concept art book, but not to bury the lead or anything like that. Definitely want to talk about this Rippazine Collection. So this is collecting all of the short stories that have appeared in the first 5 issues of the Rippazine, along with an original story by Zachary Levi with Evan Scale as the artist. So this is going to be collecting Salvage, Saoirse, Dirty Deeds, Catch and Kill, Blue Shift Tryouts, and a new short story called Unpack That, which is going to be by Zachary Levi, as well as having Evan Scale as the artist, who, if you know, was the artist for Dirty Deeds. He did a fantastic job on Dirty Deeds, so I'm really excited for this one. Definitely the reason to pick up this collection if you've read all of these stories in the Rippazine, if you kept up with the Rippazine. Definitely that original short story coming with this collection is a really cool thing to do. But nothing really more than that. Both of these covers are by Kane and White. I believe this is the soft cover. That's the paperback, or I got it the other way around. This is probably paperback and then hardcover. So pretty standard collection. You got one shirt, I think. I don't think you even have a poster. This is the I Want It All picture here. So nothing really too groundbreaking with this, but we do have that short story by Zachary Levi. It is supporting Nerd HQ. It says, nonprofit charities support mental health services, which I always am a bit conflicted with the mental health industry, but I do think it's a good intention, which I'm always going to appreciate. But we'll get into some art from the short story. So like it said, this is called Unpack That. So it does seem like we've got Ingrid Valdez in this is a fantastic piece of art from Ingrid. So I absolutely love this. And it does seem like she's in like a therapist chair. And we've got, I believe it's Tobias Foon, if I've got the name correctly. But you've got this right picture here, and you've got the National Accept Rehabilitation and Diagnostics Heroic Qualification Nerd HQ. So this is going to be definitely probably a little bit tongue-in-cheek, maybe a bit referential of a story, but this is probably going to be about 16 pages or so, the length of all the other short stories, and it certainly could be it says to me it's like a preview, so we certainly could be getting a longer form story of this. But the fact that it's going to be involving Ingrid is going to be an interesting thing, because she was the titular, or the main character, I really want to say, in Chasing Ghosts. So we're really leaning in on Ingrid Valdez, really building her character, or at least the Rippaverse is doing that, which I think is a pretty cool thing. But it's made about $7,000 so far. We've had some closeouts, Definitive Yaira edition as well. Nothing too big in terms of that to really report to you guys. So Rippaverse is really chugging along quite well, but this definitely was the biggest announcement in terms of new things. So it was a pretty cool thing to see, but it's nothing that's like too groundbreaking. It's not like we're getting Alpha Core 2. It's not like we're getting an announcement of another book, but it certainly is pretty cool to see stuff like this happening. And there's all these collaborations that they're constantly involved in, which is a really cool thing to see from the perspective of a fan. But we are going to get into the second thing here. This is, of course, the original concept art of Saints and Sinners. So, of course, I've reviewed all the concept art books on Braxcast, and I don't want to lose that record. So we're going to go over this. This is, of course, Marcos Rios is the concept artist for the Rippaverse. He has been since ISO #1. Jen and Sylvia Saska are the lore masters of the Rippaverse, and they're doing the narration for this, which makes sense since they did write one of the short stories. My personal favorite short story of the Saints and Sinners collection, Underdog. And of course, my opinion is correct. And if you disagree, well, then the unsubscribe button is right below. But I'm just being a little bit facetious there, of course. I like to make jokes. That's why I call myself Joker. But anyways, let's get right into this. So there's definitely a lot of text. I'm going to read this out for you. So this is Chasing Ghosts. This is written by Az from Heels vs. Babyface. And Az is saying, at university, when I had aspirations to hopefully become a comic book writer, I created Noah and Maya as a married couple of hitmen. As I worked out my story, Chasing Ghosts, Lucas was added to the mix and became a vital aspect to tie all these threads together. The ghosts Chasing Ghosts is a clever play on the military unit, which are responsible for mob hits in Forest Park that are baffling the local police, which force them to call in the ex-sep detective of the Alpha Corps, Ingrid Valdez. These characters were a long time coming, originally created in 1997, year before I was born. That's a long time ago, by Az, who wanted to write a comic about these characters that were put on the back burner until now, when the opportunity arose. Their designs evolved from their original ideas through Marcos to be the badass trio we see in Saints and Sinners #1. The symbol for the ghost is a triple yin-yang to represent each of the three members. The yin-yang is white, black, and red, with the eyes varying between the three, also in white, black, and red. And you can see that yin-yang symbol right there. So that is Noah Cadell. We've got Mia Cadell right here. So we've got, let's see, the tactical leader of the Ghost, who is responsible for planning their missions. He wears digital urban camo. In this case, the location of their warfare. His appearance reference was Jim Caviezel as a jumping off point for Marcos's designs. Blue eyes, dark hair, big muscular build. The character was originally the odd man out when he joined with the Ghost, whose other members are twins, Maya and Lucas. The chemistry between Maya and him was undeniable from the get-go, causing turbulence between him and Lucas. Eventually, he won him over with his character and how happy he makes his sister. Other than being a highly skilled military expert, he has no ex-sep abilities. And of course, Maya Cadell, the twin sister of Lucas, and the strongest wielder of spirit magic between the two. She's also the wife of Noah, the two of them falling in love on the battlefield and eventually marrying, as envisioned many years ago. A married couple who worked together in the military. Maya is loosely based on Sydney Sweeney. Her eyes emit white smoke, and white light is around her body when she uses her powers. The spirit magic is something their mother practiced, and in this story becomes very important after Lucas is killed after going on a solo mission while her sister is with her husband. So there definitely is a lot of lore. So I'd love to see Az get more to do with these characters. They seem very interesting, and I'd love to see like a Chasing Ghosts like full story on that basis. So definitely a lot of thought that was put into all of these sorts of things. So we are seeing this one. This is Lucas Ashford, the ill-fated twin brother of Maya, who can also use spirit magic, but not with the same level of power and skill as his sister. The catalyst to the story in Chasing Ghosts, Lucas takes on a mission when the other two-thirds of his unit, the happy couple, are celebrating together, and ultimately meets his end in a setup that sees him tortured to death by the mob. Maya and Noah are consumed with guilt as they seek revenge and look for a way to bring Lucas back in whatever way that they can. Unlike the other two living members of the team, Lucas is seen as a vengeful spirit, gaunt, and almost zombie-esque in appearance. His tethered form is more reminiscent of his living form. His upper body seen, while from the waist down is seen as wisps. Quite interesting. So we've got the Smile, the soul or spirit reaper behind the entire ordeal. More of his story is to be revealed, but this demon is responsible for setting in motion the events leading to Lucas finding his untimely demise at the hands of the mob who mutilate him to death. The retaliation from the Ghost forces the Forest Park Police Department to bring in Alpha Corps' Ingrid to assist with the investigation. The Smile appears as a twisted jester dressed in black and white with a sinister skeletal body, and the skeletal body as a juxtaposition of his attire. He's 6'4", has a thin build and glowing eyes within his skull's eye sockets. His touch is corrosive, and the villain of the story as the king of the spirit realm. He plays a larger part with the Ghost and the true object of his fixation, Ingrid Valdez. The point was to give Ingrid a villain and a mystery to uncover, showcasing her detective prowess. So, of course, the Smile was a character I created it back in the late 1980s, believe it or not. I was heavily into sword and sorcery, fantasy books, and I drew the sketch of a skeletal figure, and I called him the Harley Quinn. That's from Heels vs. Babyface. And Az was a passionate collaborator, and he has my respect for that. Usually when I design a character, the lesser details, like an inch size difference of a character's chest, the size of a hand, or exact length of hair, are not a big deal, since they're general things that the main artist picks up on and draws in a universal way based on what I described within the file. However, Az was very keen on making sure every detail of these characters was on point and to what he had carefully thought out, yes, including the size of a chest I truly honor working with people who go the extra mile when it comes to describing their characters and creations, as it makes the process more fun for me. Az was also very enthusiastic about the potential of some of our designs for future ideas, which speaks to how much he truly cares about the Rippaverse. So then lastly, we've got the Apex. Ingrid is the only member of the Alpha Corps who cannot fly, and the Apex was designed to even the playing field. The motor vehicle transforms from a two-wheeler to a four-wheeler with the whip's strings / wires acts as covers for the wheels and as weapons used to cut through terrain while driving. Ingrid can attach her energy wires into the bike to enhance the capability of its wires through armholes on the side of the bike. The two-wheeled form of the bike has two tires connected side by side that can separate into the four-wheeler for off-roading required in some pursuits. The vehicle uses advanced technology, nanotechnology, that allows the bulletproof windshields and metal to adjust and expand to this form. Safety first, Ingrid wears a helmet when riding the Apex to protect herself in the unlikely circumstance of a crash. The vehicle is green and black with green LED lights and embellishments, which really goes with the Alpha Corps theme. I do believe in Texas, police officers wear green. So that's why the Alpha Corps wears green. The Apex seemed to me like something that Ingrid needed. If the boys could fly, she required an equalizer of sorts, and the Apex seemed like the perfect fit for both her personality and attitude, and I 100% agree. So this is cool. So now on to Across the Bear, which is written by Jay David, also known as Drunk Freepio, who is a fan of the channel. Thank you very much for enjoying the content, Jay. I certainly enjoyed Across the Bear. I'm sure I'm going to enjoy going through this concept art that you are involved in. So Cameron Cross was born from the question, what does it mean to be a hero when your hands are stained? He's a man who was stripped of his will, turned into a weapon, and then forced to reckon with the aftermath. His fight isn't just against enemies, it's against his past. Redemption isn't about erasing what he's done, it's about proving that even a broken weapon can become a shield. That's why he matters, because in a world of black and white, Cross lives in the gray, where true courage isn't just strength, but the choice to keep fighting when forgiveness feels impossible. I definitely like that concept. Of course, there was a lot of this idea of forgiveness. And of course, you get into Christianity, it's very much centered around forgiveness, the Sermon on the Mount. But that's neither here nor there. Cameron Cross, once a decorated U.S. Army soldier renowned for his tactical brilliance, volunteered for the experimental cybernetic Alpha Platoon, the CAP, where advanced neural chips transformed him into a super soldier enhanced in mind, body, and reflexes. But the technology came at a cost. The military used the chips to strip CAP operatives of free will, turning them into puppets. During a mission, an EMP blast fried Cameron's chip, freeing him from control while leaving his enhancements intact. Now a fugitive, he operates as the vigilante Cross, fighting crime and corruption while resisting the chip's lingering influence. Haunted by the atrocities he committed under forced obedience, he searches for redemption, using his ability to shield others from the same fate. Hunted by his former handlers and wrestling with his own humanity, Cross walks the razor edge between man and machine. Driven by the hope that one day he might earn forgiveness he can never grant himself, Cross wears a cross on his chest and neck, symbolizing both his path to redemption and the deeper question of whether sentient life can possess a soul and conscience. So if I remember correctly, Jay was the first contact to give me work for the Saints and Sinners designs. Cool and eager, he was truly an amazing friend to work with, confident in the designs, potentially becoming fan favorites, and ready to cook up more stuff for the future of the Rippaverse if things go well. He wanted the designs within Across the Bear to feel grounded in terms of looks and outfits and realistic, but with the potential to blow up in future books. And of course, it's Marcos's input on that. Next, we've got The Weight of Restraint. This is by Eric July. When Jackson came into the mix, the ask was simple. He needed to look like a young man, but with the strength that spoke for itself. Clean, cut, sharp, and no frills. That's from Eric July. So this is Jackson Cainart, who's probably the main lawyer, or basically the main character in this book, other than Sanford Willard. So Jackson Cainart, professional and driven. You can tell that Jackson means business from looking at him. He dresses in a suit, but is modest, much like he is. He lets his skills and moral compass do the talking for him. Jackson Cainart works for the Judicial Accountability Annex within the Forest Park Central Legal Commission and is the latest upholder of justice to be recruited to sign off on the paperwork that keeps the incarcerated in prison. However, he's not one to just look the other way. He's not one to just look the other way, and he has incredibly attuned gut instincts, which leads him to follow a cover-up happening across many files for many prisoners. Most men would be happy to just collect an easy paycheck, but it is justice for all that drives him. The one thing I remember being specific about was that mustache, subtle but part of his identity. And only hair on his head would be up top with the sides buzzed tight. Marcos brought that to life in a way that made Jackson feel immediately real, like a guy you've met but still can't quite pin down and would fight in your corner to the death if needed. So definitely like that input there. So we've got Samford Willard here, who of course isn't unique to the Weight of Restraint. He's made appearances in Isom, which makes this story quite interesting to me. So Samford Willard, you know him as Avery Silman's ranch hand at Silman Ranch, and also Avery's best friend and confidant. This marks a new perspective on him, as the Isom series has hinted at a dark past in previous run-ins of the law. Samford is the best friend anyone could ask for, and a good husband. These two narratives just do not seem to line up for him. Here we see Samford much younger and many years ago. The Weight of Restraint gives us a glimpse into who he has been and what he has survived. Even in situations where Samford is very much out of control, he's able to control the only thing that matters, his reactions to those around him. We find Samford imprisoned, but completely in control. He's reserved, avoids conflict, and appears determined not to make the situation any worse. Even here, you can see he's a good man who finds himself in a tough spot. So working with Eric never fails to get me excited for what's to come. Honestly, aside from the fact that he has an amazingly creative mind for characters, him being the head and voice of the Rippaverse itself makes every design he has for me feel like they're about to blow up with mysteries and interesting connections to the expanding universe. Even if it's a smaller side character, it was no different while designing the couple of characters within the Weight of Restraint. And I can't wait to see what fans think of this and the rest of the stories within Saints and Sinners, and that's of course Marcos's input on this. With Samford, I wanted someone who was deeply tied to Isom's world without being literal family. The ranch is a cornerstone for Avery's world, so the man who helps run it had to carry that same weight. But what we show in the Weight of Restraint is Sam before all of that. Younger, just as battle-tested, holding his own out there in the world. You can already see in his eyes that he's not one to bend. Marcos nailed that energy, the kind of character who earns your trust without saying much. He's quite the strength before the storm. I think the way he appeared was quite good. So next we've got Bone God. This is Mauler's story, also known, well, actually his name is Caleb Edwards, but he's known as Mauler. Definitely enjoyed Bone God, but like I said, I think this would work better as a longer story. Give Mauler and Will Conrad 96 pages, Eric, and I think they'll do something fantastic. It's really what I want for Bone God. So we've got, this is, of course, Mauler's input here. When building a story and characters to populate it, I prefer taking a route that could be considered pragmatic until I see something of a freedom to freestyle. First and foremost, starting with a baseline of his adventure and its inhibitions, and its inhabitants, who would be the most interesting people to have here that would reasonably enter the scenario. Castor Graves, he's an asshole Indiana Jones, truly selfish and not interested in people getting in the way. Think of a handsome guy, but rough around the edges, gruff and probably permanently scowling, blue eyes and dark hair, 6'2", 225 pounds. He sports a 5 o'clock shadow, dark cameo fatigues, and a muscular build. The character's designs evolved through the hands of multiple artists, starting with the initial concept artist by Marcos Rios, followed by the sequential art of Will Conrad, and finally brought to life with colors by Bruno Hang. Over time, the original cameo pattern was replaced with a solid dark, blue and black overall look, meticulous in detail from character story to how the story is worn by the character in physical representation. Castor's rough exterior is a clue to a rich backstory for a character that is yet to be uncovered, a master adventurer who has survived impossible missions and lived to tell the tale. It's a fascinating contrast that he is a reluctant hero at best. So Mr. Maps is an ensemble of entertaining, in an ensemble of entertaining, deeply flawed individuals. Mr. Maps is a breath of fresh air in the group that has come together in this story. Joyful, a bit fat, 1950s type of British explorer outfit style, mutton chop beard of reddish brown color with brown eyes, tiny round glasses, and a belt of many pouches. 5'5", a short king, an experienced and gifted guide with impeccable manners. His soul still intact. Mr. Maps feels like he shouldn't be here, as he's a kind, good-natured, more innocent character that somehow, by means of his skills, finds himself deep underground on a venture of discovery that leads to a treasure so horrific that no one is prepared. Maps is a good confidant to Castor, as they're both hired hands brought into the insane family drama of the Van Nooses, if I'm saying that correctly. So we've got Adam/Stephen Van Noos. As a character reference, Callum was thinking about John Hurt. In general, his clothing would be somewhat practical for the expedition, but he's a very old scholar/scientist type. Callum is a creative who loves storytelling. When he created Adam, he created a man obsessed with appearances, truly believing himself to be the leader of man through his drive, accomplishments, and ambition. He believes his advancements and discoveries will greatly benefit the world, namely himself and his loved ones. Not a soft man by any means, he is blinded to the obvious because his desire and the steps to get there are all he sees. A much older character than we usually see in comics, Adam is 73 years young, and creatively so for a very good reason that will soon be revealed. A very interesting take on a particular comic trope, but made very fresh and unique with its execution here. We've got Wyndham Van Noos. Callum pictured him wearing what Sam and Dean Winchester do. He's like his dad, but very full of himself and confident about any and all choices he makes, both in attitude and clothing, etc. Some gray hairs in his blonde, the kind of loud, self-assured, and expectant man who's born into great wealth and spent most of his life believing he would be the one to inherit the kingdom. A consummate daddy's boy. He is his father's lapdog, and he has the same blindness to anything that doesn't fit into their narrative. Then, of course, we've got William Van Hoos, the youngest son of Adam and his most recent wife Sarah. He's a younger guy dressed for the expedition. Perhaps the gear is more suited for easier movement, unlike his older half-brother William is a more reasonable and naive character. Despite being born into great wealth, the reality check of being raised by his mother kept him from being a clone of his father. And of course, we've got Sarah Taylor, ex-wife to Adam Van Noos, and you really feel it. She gained her wealth and power through marriage. Being married to Adam and giving him a son was price enough for such a privilege. It was not a happy marriage. The fallout of such makes for some interesting dialogue and spicy character relationships. She is a grounding force in Adam's fantasy life, refusing to rename herself Eve when Adam had his name legally changed. Very plain and normal looking, nothing that stands out. She's got a gun and the gear for this kind of trip. That's very much, I think it's a pretty interesting dynamic. And of course, we've got Bone God. Caleb drew this character design in the sketch to show Marcos. He had a particular design for Bone God, as well as a detailed, well thought out story of what he is and what his very existence and discovery means for the world. Firstly, a cube of bones that are all stacked and crushed to the shape, but you can still identify they are bones. Plenty of human or alien bones in there. In the center, there is a black scar. That's the creature itself, with an eye in the center of it. The bones are drawn to it, and the prison gave it the overall. The overall shape somewhat. 7'7" in his other form. Once he has absorbed the bones of those around him, the Bone God is made up entirely of bones. Yes, the Bone God is made up entirely of bones, his coloration being dark, even black with patches of yellow to show the extreme age collection of the bones that make up the anatomy of this creature. And of course, Mahler was very passionate about his script for Bone God, and it showed. He made sure that I got every design down to the dot, especially when it came to the main entity of Bone God. It might sound obvious, but most of the time as the concept artist, I'm given too much freedom. So to have Mahler be so involved in these designs was really helpful to make sure I captured his vision accurately. Needless to say, with Mahler's horror background, it was no surprise that I had to design some grotesque things for him in this book, and I'm not complaining. Him and the Saskas may soon start competing for the most horrific designs within the Rippaverse. Quite interesting there. And of course, speaking of the Saskas, we've got the Underdog, my personal favorite story, so I'm excited to get into this one. And having been wrestling fans since the first Hell in a Cell and throughout the years that followed, getting to build on the Southern Style Wrestling League, aka the SSWL, was a dream project. Of course, I don't have much experience with wrestling. I think it was probably around, I don't know, over 20 years ago at this point when I went to like the one wrestling match I ever saw in person. Let's see. So Tuna, Randall Tuna Calhoun is an original creation by Chuck Dixon and Joe Bennett, having had his first appearance in The Horseman Welcome to Florist Park. When you first saw Tuna, he had let himself go, but he was described as a former wrestler, which piqued our interest in him. This younger version of Tuna is back when he was in his prime. About a decade earlier from his character introduction, Tuna is in stellar shape, especially for him with long blonde hair, although his trademark sky over his one eye is still present here, suggesting there are more stories yet to reveal his sort of path. We decided to place him in pink as a suggestion of his extreme masculinity, which is preserved even when wearing traditionally feminine colors. He was a lot prettier in the past, wearing a traditional unitard, proclaiming his SSWL wrestling name, Big Tuna. And of course, we've got, let's see here, we've got Tuna's valets. Tuna's valets are a tribute to the classic ladies of wrestling that served as valets or managers and appeared ringside more commonly than in the ring themselves. They are both beautiful blonde bombshells, look similar, poking fun at the fact that so many of these beautiful blondes are fairly interchangeable. Tuna valets are dressed in classic evening gowns as a shout out to the beloved evening gown matches of the past. And you can see very similar. They're just there to be arm candy. They're just there to make the men hoot and holler. And honestly, that does make the story feel more real, and it definitely adds, I would say, depth to Tuna's character. But it definitely makes Tuna feel like more like he's that type of guy. Like, he loves the praise, he loves having the pretty women around him, and he loves being cheered for by the fans. So I think this Oscars really captured the atmosphere that we're going for. So Captain Crush, coming from Jewish descent, Captain Crush is heavily inspired by the famous Road Warriors. His costume strikes fear into his opponents, giving off the appearance of danger, violence, and chaos. Captain Crush's outfit is also a take on classic armor. He gives off the vibe of classic wrestlers from the 80s, when the gimmick-style wrestler rules supreme. In the 80s wrestling, a gimmick was more important than anything, but sadly, theatrics have been replaced in favor of wrestlers presenting themselves as more serious athletes. Captain Crush is a testament to the golden age of wrestling that truly captures the imagination of young audiences, young and old. So next up, we've got Big Guy, a blast from the past, being styled off the punk scene of the 80s. He takes after icons of that era, like Mr. T, to give him an edgy look. We gave him a mohawk and impractical, we gave him a mohawk and impractical eyebrow earrings. The mohawk serves to set him apart from the rest, as well as the intimidation factor. The eyebrow earrings display his overconfidence in not getting hurt. Big Guy is a pro. He grew up dreaming of being in the big leagues and following in the footsteps of his wrestler heroes. Big Guy is dressed in a classic style unitard, red and black, the full body kind, not the shorts. He may look scary, but inside the ring, he is fair and sportsmanlike. And of course, we've got T-Mac, Georgie Gold's overbearing and overly confident mother. T-Mac, she's a wild child, and even at her age, all decked out in punk attire. T-Mac sports a mohawk, black lipstick, black nails, a jean jacket, and piercings. T-Mac has never outgrown her look. Rather, as she's aged, she's settled more and more into her punk-style attitude. While no tattoos can be seen, it would not be a shock to know that T-Mac is very likely covered in them. As a ringside announcer, T-Mac is vicious, and her looks match that. And so next, we've got Jay Sox, a sassy ringside announcer in Anthony Diamond Shooting Guy's Backyard Wrestling League. She's loud and proud and decked out in wannabe Hollywood style, reminiscent of classic wrestlers like Hollywood Hogan or Goldust. Jay Sox is a senior lady but chooses not to act or dress her age. She wears crimson reflective aviators, gold chains, golden heels, and a shiny gold jacket over a black and white floral dress. Jay Sox does not sport an old lady haircut but has her luscious locks blown out and at shoulder length. And of course, next we've got Georgie Gold, one of the Hollywood hopeful wrestlers. He's the ladies' man's type, although his style is a bit on the feminine side. He's covered in gold from his long flowing golden hair to his low V-cut unitard. We again wanted to pay tribute to the classic wrestlers. Georgie has the letter G tattooed on both his shoulders, which pokes a bit of fun at wrestlers and their poorly thought out permanent tattoo decisions. Georgie Gold also lovingly emulates Goldust, one of the greatest gimmick wrestlers to ever live. He's playful and cheeky in design. And yes, I think there are some women that like the guys that have like the masculine build and the feminine face. That, to my knowledge, of course, mileage is going to vary, but I think like someone like Georgie Gold, like a lot of ladies are going to really be into that. So next we've got Anthony Diamond Shungite. Some of the strongest men are raised by truly extraordinary patriarchs. So is the case with Larry Shungite. A beautiful part of wrestling is that often the whole families are part of it, passing the wrestling tradition down to each new generation. Anthony was a wrestler in his day who never made it big, but trained many who got to go on to the best of the best in the big leagues. Anthony is in his senior years, but still as tough as they come. Now, of course, you've got Larry's nieces and nephews. We wanted Larry to come from a wrestling family and have part of that family be his nieces and nephews. Wrestling has such a profound effect on its youth audience. Kids have always loved wrestling and always will. It was important for Larry to be seen as a bit of a role model, and you see how he carries that weight through wanting to set a good example for his nieces and nephews. And of course, the man himself, the younger Larry Shungite. So Larry Shungite, this awesome pro wrestling character, was created by Eric July. The story takes place many years before his introduction in Isom 2. Here, Larry has the beginnings of his look and all his attitude. He's a tribute to wrestlers like The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin. Larry Shungite is a true champion and born a champion at that time. Larry is just entertaining into the SSWL, and he's still at the beginning of his hardened look. The main color of his unitard is his timeless black. His gloves are red. Even now, Larry Shungite has the makings of a star pro wrestler and fan favorite. Of course, we've got Robin Williams, the blonde bombshell of the women's division of the SSWL. Robin Williams is the ultimate femme fatale. She exudes playfulness, but is not someone to be taken lightly, both in and out of the ring. She is very ambitious and career-minded, and always looking for an opportunity to prove herself. A loving homage to wrestlers like AJ Lee. Robin Williams is as beautiful as she is deadly. She's currently involved with Larry Shungite in what began as a purely professional relationship, but it's starting to evolve into something more for both of them. Robin wears heavy makeup, fishnet stockings, and a black leather jacket with pink trim, black leather wrestling outfit and black leather wrestling boots. She looks like trouble, and she is certainly so. And then lastly, actually not quite so lastly, but we've got Genghis G. Gao, the fierce businessman and creative mind behind the SSWL. Is Genghis G. Gao, the league's co-owner, and Genghis does not just have the power of money and influence, but he also keeps in top shape. He is a loving tribute to the big league bosses out there. Genghis is always dressed in expensive professional attire with his beard neatly braided. While he appears composed, calm exterior, hides a short temper and little patience. Genghis is also the father of Floor Spark Star owner and editor-in-chief, Gang G. Gao. That was quite interesting. I think Floor Spark Star, Catch and Kill, it's kind of a bit of a connection there. Quite interesting. You already know how I feel about working with the Saskas. Their process is yet to change, but it's definitely upgraded when it comes to the enthusiasm they literally emit. When working on the underdog designs, they made sure to communicate as swiftly as possible while also providing me with photo references of the ideas they had in mind. And it really sped things up. We ended wrapping up all of the designs for their said story in just 2 days. Their need and love to see the next one after the other one made it all feel like a fun and professional game, which is ironic considering how both the Saskas and myself take this job as seriously as possible, which is always very nice to hear. And this is, I believe, the last one. This is One Little Push, written by Will Jordan, also known as the Critical Jinker. An important element of the design was to find a balance between the anonymous and the otherworldly. I wanted the man in the hat to almost look like someone you might pass by on the street without really noticing. Just another pedestrian making his way on business of his own. So the man in the hat, a veteran writer, Will's approach to the script was first a submission of a novel short story before adapting the script into a comic book format. The story revolves around this mysterious character who we meet, musing in an inner dialogue, which introduces him to the audience, even though he's a very familiar figure, or inevitably, however, his boss suggests that there is much we do not know about this entity. He is very good at his job for a lifetime of practice, but does not enjoy it. In this instance, he bends the outcome with one little push to prolong what must be massively affecting the lives around him, but never truly being known for doing such. He's wearing a long overcoat and a hat. his head down, his head down, hands in his pocket, his face always hidden from view. We're never supposed to know what he looks like. And then, of course, the last character is Kane. With Kane's design, I wanted a character who combined lethality with a kind of predatory grace. Kane, the world-class killer, is an assassin who has never failed. The guy you want to hire for all execution contracts, who is rumored to have a certain edge over his marks. Could he be an except? What kind of powers could the man know? Known only as Kane possess, he remains shrouded in mystery, yet has connections to acquire high-powered weaponry capable of taking down a god, and it better be because that's exactly what Darren Fontano is paying him to do. We see him in a variety of costumes, from the black mercenary attire when meeting with his client to the construction worker disguise he dons when getting in the perfect position to take out his target. Male, mid-40s, white, slender build, dark shoulder-length hair swept back from a lean, angular face, a face that's lived a life neither short nor easy. So working with Will, aka Critical Drinker, was honestly the most courteous and professional experience so far in the sense of communication. From the moment the Toscans put me in contact with Drinker to the last design confirmation, it was a smooth and efficient back and forth, going straight to the point. He was enthusiastic in his own ways and accomplished as he is in the creative sphere, a masterful pro. And that is it. Sorry if I'm still a little bit sniffly, as I said on live stream yesterday, so I kind of messed up with reading a little bit, but hopefully you guys enjoyed this one regardless. It's a really cool concept art book. I'm not sure if it's still available, but at least you got to see a little bit of it. But I always love these concept art books, and I think this was a really, really cool one to do. So definitely something that I enjoy, and I definitely need to do more Saints and Sinners, because you can just feel the amount of passion that everyone involved, everyone who created these 6 short stories had for Saints and Sinners, and that passion showed through in the commercial success and $500,000 in the collection, and of course the fan response from what I've seen has been pretty positive. People are liking it, and of course we're all tiering the stories slightly differently based on our own personal tastes, but that's of course to be expected. But that's all I have for you guys for this episode of the Braxcast. Hopefully you enjoyed it despite my hiccups and sniffling. But regardless, we'll be back next week with more Rippaverse stuff. Going to go over the Dokemon cards next week, so stay tuned for that. But for now, Joker is
Thank
out.
you for tuning in to the Braxcast. Be sure to like, comment, follow, and subscribe to keep up with the Rippaverse.